Commander Stone will complete the standard debrief. I expect your team's full report on my desk by 0800 tomorrow. As the Admiral departed, the atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. They studied Blake with new intensity, reassessing everything they thought they knew about the quiet officer who had just outmaneuvered his experienced team using tactics he couldn't identify despite years of special operations experience. Dismissed, Commander Stone announced after completing the formal debrief requirements. Excellent work by both teams under challenging conditions. As the operators filed out, Lieutenant Parker lingered behind, waiting until he could approach Blake privately. "That drainage ravine," he said quietly. "It doesn't appear in historical satellite imagery either." I checked. Blake regarded him steadily. "You have good attention to detail, Lieutenant. My father served in special reconnaissance. He taught me that what isn't said often matters more than what is." Parker hesitated before continuing. "Whatever you're really doing here, Commander, I don't think it's what Admiral Morrison believes it is." "Focus on the training, Lieutenant," she replied, neither confirming nor denying his implied question. "This program has valuable lessons for everyone involved." Before he could respond, Captain Hayes appeared at Blake's side. "Lieutenant Commander, a moment of your time." Parker nodded respectfully before departing, leaving the two women alone in the debriefing room. Hayes activated a small electronic device that emitted a subtle hum, establishing a localized counter-surveillance field. "The Admiral is accelerating his inquiries," Hayes informed her, voice low despite the security measures. "He's requested your complete service record directly from Naval Personnel Command. They'll provide the official version," Blake replied calmly. "Yes, but he's also reaching out through unofficial channels, former teammates, previous commanding officers." As expected, Hayes studied her face closely. "He's growing desperate. That makes him dangerous. It also makes him predictable." Blake countered. "The culmination ceremony is in 3 days. Everything remains on schedule. And if he attempts to remove you from the program before then, he won't," Blake said with quiet certainty. "His pride demands public vindication, not administrative maneuvers. He needs to prove he was right about women in special operations, especially to the visiting dignitaries and command staff." Hayes nodded slowly. "The package arrived this morning. Secure storage in my quarters until the ceremony. Any word on our ghost?" "Still silent. But if our theory is correct, they'll make contact at the ceremony. It's their last opportunity." Blake's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. 7 years is a long time away for answers. Some missions require patience above all else. Hayes reminded her, deactivating the counter-surveillance device. "We're close, Blake. Don't lose focus now." The following morning brought increased scrutiny from Admiral Morrison's staff. Blake noticed the additional observers during tactical exercises, the subtle changes in briefing protocols, the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The pressure was building exactly as predicted. During the afternoon combat simulation, Blake deliberately moderated her performance, allowing small tactical errors that would satisfy Morrison's expectations while maintaining overall competency. The balance was delicate. Too perfect would raise suspicions. Too flawed would damage her cover's credibility. Lieutenant Parker continued his quiet observations, noting details that didn't align with standard personnel files. Blake's equipment handling showed familiarity with classified systems. Her tactical communications revealed knowledge of protocols typically restricted to senior operators. Most telling was her unconscious use of hand signals that belonged to units that officially didn't exist. Morrison's investigation intensified on day 2. Phone calls to former commanding officers, requests for deployment records, inquiries about training certifications that should have been routine but somehow generated unusual delays. The bureaucratic machinery was working exactly as designed, protecting operational security through systematic misdirection. Blake maintained her routine with practiced discipline. Morning physical training, classroom instruction, afternoon field exercises. She participated fully while remaining carefully unremarkable, a masterclass in operational camouflage. But she could feel the walls closing in. Morrison was persistent, methodical, and increasingly frustrated by the gaps in her official record. The evening briefing revealed Morrison's growing desperation. His questions had shifted from professional curiosity to aggressive interrogation. Where exactly did you serve your first deployment, Commander Blake? Which specific units were you attached to during Operation Desert Shield? Can you provide the names of your previous commanding officers for verification purposes? Blake answered each question with practiced precision, providing information that was technically accurate while revealing nothing of operational significance. Her responses satisfied protocol requirements while maintaining the careful fiction that protected her true mission. After the briefing, Hayes approached with subtle urgency. He's reaching out to foreign intelligence contacts, she whispered during a brief corridor encounter, trying to verify deployment records through back channels. That crosses several lines. Blake nodded grimly. How much time do we have? 24 hours, maybe less. He's planning something for the ceremony tomorrow. Public exposure, maximum embarrassment. He wants to prove his point about women in special operations with an audience that includes Pentagon brass. Perfect, Blake replied with quiet confidence. Let him make his move. The culmination ceremony arrived with military precision. Dress uniforms, polished brass, distinguished visitors from Pentagon headquarters and Allied Special Operations Commands. Blake stood among the graduating class, her bearing professional but unremarkable, another face in the formation. Admiral Morrison took the podium with obvious satisfaction. He had planned this moment carefully, chosen his timing for maximum impact. The assembled dignitaries represented the military's highest echelons, decision-makers who would witness his vindication. Today marks the successful completion of our Advanced Special Operations Training Program, Morrison announced, his voice carrying across the ceremonial hall. We have tested these officers under the most demanding conditions, evaluated their capabilities against the highest standards. His eyes found Blake in the formation, lingering with predatory satisfaction. Before we proceed with commendations, I would like to recognize the diverse backgrounds our candidates bring to special operations. Commander Blake, would you please step forward? Blake moved with calm precision, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet hall. Every eye focused on her as she approached the podium, wondering what was about to unfold. Morrison smiled with barely concealed anticipation. Commander Blake represents the integration of diverse personnel into our most demanding training environments. Her background demonstrates how civilian academic preparation can transition into military service. Blake stood at attention, her expression neutral, betraying nothing of what was coming. Morrison continued his calculated humiliation. In the spirit of recognizing achievements across all backgrounds, I'm curious about your operational experience, Commander. For our distinguished guests, could you share your call sign from previous deployments? The question hung in the air like a blade. Morrison expected embarrassment, admission of inexperience, proof that women with limited backgrounds had no place in elite operations. The assembled officers waited in uncomfortable silence. Lieutenant Parker shifted uneasily, recognizing the trap. Captain Hayes remained motionless, her face carefully blank. Blake met Morrison's gaze steadily, her voice clear and unwavering when she finally spoke. Iron Widow, sir. The words struck the ceremonial hall like a thunderclap. Morrison's confident smile faltered, confusion replacing predatory satisfaction. Several senior officers straightened in recognition, their faces showing dawning comprehension. Iron Widow. The name reverberated through the hall like a shockwave. Pentagon officials exchanged meaningful glances, their expressions shifting from polite attention to intense focus. Allied commanders leaned forward, recognizing a legend they had heard whispered in classified briefings. Morrison's face drained of color. Iron Widow was not just any call sign. It belonged to a ghost operative whose missions were compartmentalized at the highest levels, whose very existence was known only to select intelligence circles. The officer responsible for operations that officially never happened. Blake maintained her position at attention, unmoved by the stunned silence that had engulfed the ceremony. She had carried this secret for 7 years, maintaining deep cover while Morrison's investigation circled closer to truths he wasn't clear to discover. A Pentagon general in the front row stood slowly, his movement drawing every eye in the hall. General Crawford had supervised classified operations for 2 decades, had signed authorizations for missions that existed only in sealed files. His voice carried absolute authority when he finally spoke. Admiral Morrison, I believe we need to discuss operational security protocols immediately. Morrison's world crumbled in real time. His carefully planned moment of triumph had become a catastrophic exposure of his own ignorance. The woman he had spent days trying to humiliate possessed clearances that exceeded his own had conducted operations he would never be briefed on. Blake remained motionless as chaos erupted around her. Pentagon officials huddled in urgent consultation, their voices low but intense. Allied commanders activated secure communication devices, reporting to superiors who needed immediate notification of a blown cover operation. Lieutenant Parker stared in shock, finally understanding why nothing in Blake's record made sense. Captain Hayes maintained her professional composure, but her eyes reflected satisfaction at Morrison's complete destruction. The ceremonial hall had transformed into a crisis management center. Security personnel moved with practiced efficiency, establishing communications protocols and preparing damage assessment procedures. Morrison stood frozen at the podium, comprehending that his career had just ended in spectacular fashion. He had attacked an operator whose missions were so classified that even acknowledging her existence required special authorization. Blake finally moved, stepping back from the podium with military precision. General Crawford approached Blake with the measured steps of someone accustomed to handling explosive situations. Commander, I believe your training evaluation is complete. Please report to Secure Communications for immediate consultation with your operational command. Blake nodded acknowledgement, her expression revealing nothing of the satisfaction she felt. 7 years of patient waiting had culminated in this moment of perfect vindication. Morrison's public humiliation was merely a bonus. As she moved toward the exit, the ceremonial hall buzzed with urgent activity. Pentagon officials coordinated damage control procedures. Allied commanders updated their intelligence services, and training staff tried to comprehend how thoroughly they had misunderstood their most enigmatic candidate. Lieutenant Parker intercepted her near the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. The drainage ravine intelligence, the tactical knowledge, everything makes sense now. How long have you been operational? Blake paused, considering her response carefully. Some missions require patience, Lieutenant. Remember that when you face your own impossible assignments. Hayes appeared at Blake's shoulder, her expression professional, but eyes showing deep respect. The secure communications facility hummed with encrypted transmissions from intelligence agencies across 3 continents. Blake's cover had been compromised, but her mission objectives remained unchanged. The ghost contact they had waited 7 years to identify would either surface now or disappear forever. Hayes activated counter-surveillance protocols while Blake established connection to her operational command. The voice that answered carried authority that transcended military rank. Iron Widow, your position has been compromised. Maintain operational security and prepare for immediate extraction if necessary. Understood, Blake replied. The target remains in play. I recommend continuing mission parameters until contact is established. Negative. Political exposure requires immediate reassessment. Stand by for further instructions. Blake terminated the connection and turned to Hayes. They want extraction. Now. Hayes shook her head grimly. 7 years of work destroyed because Morrison couldn't accept female competence in special operations. His investigation drew too much attention from the wrong people. Blake checked her secure phone, noting several miscommunications from unknown sources. The extraction order might be premature. Someone was trying to make contact. The final message arrived as Blake prepared for extraction. A single encrypted text containing coordinates she recognized from classified briefings 7 years earlier. The ghost had finally surfaced, drawn out by the very exposure that threatened to end her mission. Hayes read the message over Blake's shoulder, her expression shifting to grim determination. This is it. After 7 years, they're making contact. But it could be a trap. Blake studied the coordinates, cross-referencing them with operational intelligence from her original briefing. The location matched predictions made by analysts who had been tracking this conspiracy since before her deployment began. Morrison's investigation had achieved something unexpected. By threatening to expose Blake's cover, he had forced their target into premature action. The conspiracy they had spent 7 years infiltrating was finally vulnerable. Blake disabled her extraction beacon and activated her operational communication array. She would not abandon 7 years of patient work when success was finally within reach. The Iron Widow had one more mission to complete. Outside, Morrison faced a tribunal that would end his career, never knowing that his arrogance had accidentally facilitated the most important counterintelligence operation of the decade.